For 7 seconds, the sun died. The oceans forgot how to breathe. Clouds hung frozen in the upper atmosphere, their edges crystallizing into silence. Cities, continents, the entire face of the earth paused. The sound that followed was not thunder, not an explosion, but something deeper, like the heartbeat of existence skipping one impossible beat. For 7 seconds, the universe held its breath. When light returned, it came not as dawn, but as fire. A burning halo tore through the sky, streaks of blue and red that blurred into one blazing comet before splitting apart, like the rending of reality itself. Somewhere high above the Pacific Rim, a figure hovered motionless against the dark. His eyes, usually calm and filled with warmth, flickered with unease. Superman had felt the sun's pulse falter inside him, his every cell a silent witness to the trembling of its source. The Man of Steel had lived entire lifetimes beneath that light. It was more than power. It was the rhythm of his being. And now that rhythm stuttered. He lifted his gaze. Beyond the curvature of the earth, the corona of the sun shimmered as though something vast moved within it, a shadow dancing behind nuclear fire. His voice, soft as a prayer, escaped through the static of the void. Who dares touch the light, thousands of light years away, in another sphere of reality, on a world where martial gods meditated beside rivers of flowing ki? Son Goku sat cross-legged beneath the silver leaves of an otherworldly tree. His breathing was shallow, almost non-existent. The air itself bent around him, unwilling to disturb the serenity of his ultra instinct. Then it came, a ripple across the skin of the cosmos. The tree shook. The water below turned black for the span of a heartbeat. Goku's eyes opened, silver irises reflecting stars that weren't meant to be seen from his world. "What was that?" he murmured. Hisses appeared beside him, quiet as starlight, staff gleaming with the residual pulse of the same tremor. "Something touched your son," the angel said. "Not your son, precisely, but the heart of light that binds universes together. A being crossed through dimensions without the permission of the gods." Goku stood, wiping invisible dust from his GI. His smile was small but fierce. "Sounds like someone strong, maybe too strong." Weiss didn't return the smile. "Strength isn't the concern, son Goku. The concern is intent." Goku turned toward the horizon, where dawn had begun to rise too quickly, burning white instead of gold. "Then I'll find him," he said simply. And with that, the ground beneath his feet folded like paper. In a flash of blue and silver, he was gone. On Earth, Superman's senses stretched beyond sight. He could hear tectonic plates groan, atoms cry out as gravity twisted in wrong directions. The disturbance wasn't from space. It was approaching through space, tearing its own corridor across universes. The last time he had felt something remotely similar was when Darkseid forced his way through the source wall. But this felt different. Pure energy, living will. "Kal-El," came Batman's voice through the comlink. "What's happening up there?" Superman's eyes blazed as he spoke, his voice steady but heavy with awe. "Something's coming. Not invasion, not technology. It's like..." He paused. "A man made of spirit." Then the line went dead. Not because of interference, but because every communication frequency on Earth simultaneously ceased. Static replaced sound, light fractured into shards of color, and the upper atmosphere glowed with a resonance that wasn't electromagnetic. It was soul. And from that radiance descended a figure wreathed in flame, but not ordinary fire. sky condensed into aurora. The shockwave shattered the clouds below him, splitting the sky from horizon to horizon. Superman looked up, his cape rippling in the backlash. The figure touched down on the stratosphere itself, the air solid beneath his feet, bare chest scarred from countless battles, orange and blue cloth scorched at the edges, eyes silver as mirrors reflecting infinity. "You're not from here," Superman said. "And you're strong," Goku answered, voice calm, curious. "Are you the one who hurt the light?" Superman floated forward, expression unreadable. "The sun doesn't just falter. Someone did this. If you're here, then tell me why." Goku tilted his head. "Maybe to find out." They regarded each other for a long time, two demigods suspended between worlds, windless air swirling with tension. Superman's mind cataloged everything: power level, bioelectric field, energy type. None of it matched kryptonian science. It was pure life force, something that shouldn't exist in this plane of physics. And for Goku, the man before him radiated not Kai, not magic, but faith. The energy of someone who believed in the good so deeply, it became a physical law around him. When their fists collided for the first time, the planet flinched. Air compressed into plasma. Sound vanished. The Himalayas crumbled like ash from a distant echo. The strike wasn't about dominance. It was reflex. Two protectors testing the truth of what they faced. Superman blinked mid-blow, realizing Goku's hand had moved faster than light could record. Goku, in turn, felt a counterforce that wasn't just muscle, it was conviction. A moral gravity so heavy it bent his ultra instincts' flow. They broke apart, hovering among falling dust and auroral flame. "Wait!" Goku called out suddenly. "I don't think we need to fight." But Superman's eyes had already turned red. He didn't hear the words. Above them, the solar field quaked again, and he mistook it for another attack. Heat vision lanced downward. Goku crossed his arms, energy flaring. The beam struck, parting the sea thousands of kilometers below. He grimaced, not from pain but from restraint, and murmured, "Fine, just a spar." In the void between them, two colors met, gold and crimson. For one brief, eternal moment, the Earth saw two stars collide. Far beyond them, in the edges of reality, something watched. A figure without form, without time, its face an hourglass filled with black light. "Interesting," it whispered, voice like sand, sliding through an infinite clock. Two suns aligned. The feast begins. Back in the atmosphere, the battle escalated. Superman punched through a thunderhead, lightning cascading behind him. Goku caught his wrist mid-swing, spun him, and sent him crashing into the sea. Steam erupted. The Pacific boiled. Then Superman burst upward, the shockwave carving trenches in the ocean floor. Goku laughed, pure and unburdened. "You're fun. I can feel your power rising." "You don't understand," Superman said through gritted teeth. "Every second the sun burns wrong, I lose more control." "Then let's fix it together." Superman hesitated, but before he could answer, the sky split open. The sunlight dimmed into violet, then fractured into prisms. Every wavelength inverted, turning color into sound, sound into geometry. A voice echoed from nowhere and everywhere. "Balance must be restored." The two turned in unison. Hanging in the rent between realities was a being shaped like a broken clock, its hands spinning in reverse, its core a mirror of shattered reflections. Each piece showed a different version of them: Goku, wearing armor of gods; Superman, crowned in darkness; infinite what-ifs bleeding into one another. I'm Paradox, the being said, and you, children of suns, are my contradiction. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The torn sky seemed to hold its own counsel, the rip in reality quietly ticking like a wound that had learned to count. The being of clockwork and mirror lace turned its faces, plural, toward them, and every reflected shard revealed a different dawn. In one, a farmer in Kansas raised a child with eyes like comets. In another, a child in space learned to fist-fight gods until laughter felt like breathing. The shards argued among themselves and made a single voice. You pull existence in opposite directions, Paradox said, and the words were not sound, but a pressure on the soul. Order made flesh, freedom given fists, hope, which binds, will, which breaks. You have both saved worlds. You have both doomed them. In possibilities your histories were too kind to record. Goku drifted a half step forward, palms open. The instinct in him wanted to test, to feel the texture of this enemy in motion. But the person inside the instinct, the man who had carried his son on his shoulders across a field of wheat, blown silver by the evening, spoke first. "Did you steal the sun?" he asked. "Because if you did, we'll have to take it back." Paradox's needles twisted. "I borrowed its rhythm. For 7 seconds, I taught every living thing what a pause tastes like. Your terror fed me. His hunger starved your friend." The being's clock hands twitched toward Superman with a gesture that wasn't quite mockery, wasn't quite pity. "You are tethered to light, Kryptonian. I move by unmaking it." Superman felt a familiar calm rise, older than cape and crest, older than the city he had chosen to love with all his impossible strength. It was the quiet his parents on a small farm had taught him. When the storm comes, set your feet and speak gently. He let the heat at the back of his eyes recede, the anger that tried to use him go cold. "You don't have to keep hurting what keeps us alive," he said. "If you're starving, let's find another way." Paradox tilted. The mirror flakes on its chest stirred, showing 1,000 supermen choosing 1,000 different answers, most of them fists. "How quaint," it said. "I eat the tension between what must be and what could be. I am the appetite that keeps multiverses from collapsing into boredom. Mercy is a meal for after." Goku's smile thinned, became something steady. "Then you can fight me," he said. "Here, away from the planet, we keep the people safe. After that, eat whatever you want from me, but leave this world alone." "Goku," Superman murmured. Goku glanced at him. "It's okay. I can take a few hits." Paradox laughed. The laugh cracked time. Snow fell in the stratosphere, feathers of winter conjured from a June afternoon. "You mistake me," Paradox said. "I do not want your body's ruin, son of Saiyans. I want your contradiction in motion. I want the two of you to choose each other and choose against each other until your friendship and your rivalry are indistinguishable, until the balance you keep snaps like a bowstring under a perfect note." The rip spread, a wound laced with constellations from skies that had never touched this earth. Paradox lifted its arms, and the world turned into corridors. They were not teleported so much as moved by conclusion. If a chessboard exists, the pieces must take their places. Superman found himself over the Dead Sea, the salt skin water throwing back a bruised sky. Goku hovered above a ruined temple in a desert that had not known rain in a century. In both places, the breath of the rip bent the horizon into a ring. "Two boards," Paradox murmured through the torn heavens. "One game." Superman understood the law immediately. The rip wanted him to chase light, to expend himself in the open, where every ounce of solar charge would be precious and counted. Goku's arena was the opposite stillness, dust. The kind of quiet where ultra instinct turns each heartbeat into a separate world. He did not argue with the geometry. He did not rage. He measured the wind with his hands. "Goku," he said into the comlink that did not exist. And yet the words found their way through Paradox's maze, as all simple truths do. Don't let it make you choose on its terms. Goku's voice rode a current the Rip had forgotten to devour. "I won't, but I'm not letting it hurt your son again." They moved. Superman went first. He rose through the cloud dead blue until he hit the layer where the wind becomes glass. Paradox followed as a stain on the sky, unhurried. He did not blast. He did not scream. He let the thing come, and when it did, he welcomed it with an embrace every brawler in every bar in every nowhere town would have recognized. He closed, not to crush, but to hold. The mirror plates sliced at him, hungry to show him the ways he had failed. He saw a boy he could have saved and didn't. He saw a world he could have lifted and didn't dare. He felt his heat bleed into Paradox's clockwork, as if the sun had already forgiven the theft. But against that carousel of shame, he pressed a simpler thing, the memory of a woman teaching him to knit a scarf in a winter so cold the stars rang like nails. Patience hammered the nightmare flat. "Starvation!" Paradox hissed, trying to worm free. "You are not fighting me. You are depriving me." Superman tightened his arms. "That's right." The desert answered differently. Goku didn't close. He did not blast. He simply vanished and reappeared a breath away from where Paradox had chosen to exist. He let his heel kiss the thing's clock face with surgical disdain, felt the tick skip, saw a sliver of mirror freeze on a frame where an older Goku had failed to hold his son's hand. He bowed fractionally, a respectful acknowledgement of pain, and did not allow it entry. Paradox adapted. It was built to adapt. It split itself. Suddenly 2, then 4, then a lattice of reflections pouring across the sky. Each paradox wore a different probability like a robe, and each probability hurt in its own way. "Fight him," the one over the Dead Sea whispered to Superman, eyes filled with 1,000 little supermen who had become tyrants. "If you break him now, the boy who loves battle will never stop climbing. He will break his world out of boredom, save them from him. Fight him," the one over the temple whispered to Goku. Mirrors laced with supermen whose hands had stayed gentle until the day a city burned because he refused to kill. "If you break him now, mercy loses its mask. He will decide which lives their shining law can afford. Save them from him." Goku exhaled. The breath cut a circle in the dust. He stepped into it and let the circle teach him. It taught him that intent can be a blade duller than fear if you refuse to sharpen it. It taught him that sometimes the only answer to a lie spoken in your voice is to be silent and do the work of truth with your hands. He moved. The after-images he left were not speed, so much as options declined. 1,000 ways to kill, 1,000 ways to win cheaply, refused in a lengthening string, until the only path left was the one that would keep a child in a village somewhere from knowing what fire tastes like. He struck each paradox copy once, not to destroy, to correct. Form after form stuttered and collapsed into glass powder, and the desert wind carried the powder into the mouths of statues that had been waiting 100 years to drink. Over the Dead Sea, Superman finally let go. Not because his arms faltered, his arms do not falter, but because the thing had shown him what it meant to hold forever, and forever is not for men. He opened his hands and let Paradox drift. "You want conflict," he said, his voice raw, in a way the world rarely heard. "Here's one. You are what happens when meaning has no face to answer to. I am what happens when a face decides meaning matters more than my comfort. Choose." Paradox looked down at the sea that had once been mercy, and was now a salt bowl of judgment. The mirror skins read him and found only stubbornness. It lunged, he met it. No heat vision, no thunder punches. Just the old boring work of wearing a monster out until it gave up, because it could not make you do the interesting sin. The rip narrowed. The corridors folded shut. Paradox changed the board. It chose a cathedral of moments. The world went white. Goku and Superman were pulled by the unanswered questions in their bones to a house with no walls and too many doors. Time hung on chains from a ceiling that was sometimes sky, sometimes ribcage. Every floor tile was a memory. In each archway waited a fight they had not had yet, or a goodbye they had given too late. Paradox stood at the altar and spread its hands like a priest performing a rite. Only cruelty remembers. "You are not enough," it said to both of them. "You say you are because your stories crown you, but the ledgers written in the margins disagree. And I am ledger made skin." Goku's answer was a nod. He didn't argue the math. He has lost. He has failed. He has let villains live and watched them return worse. He has chosen to fight for fun when others needed him to fight to end. He has laughed when gravity was grieving. "I'm not enough," he said. "That's why there are others." Superman flinched. Not from the idea, but from the ache of agreeing with it out loud. He could name every person who had carried the best parts of him back to him when his hands were empty. Lois, Bruce, Diana. An old man on a bench who had once told him that kindness is what makes strength socially acceptable. "Neither am I," he said, "which is why I don't do this alone." Paradox blinked. The mirrors fluttered. It was expecting texts from the book of I alone. It got gospel from the choir. "You threaten a world," Superman continued, "and we answer with a world." They did not summon armies. That was not the story they were in. What arrived instead were presences. A boy in red who runs like forgiveness. A woman whose lasso teaches liars to tell the truth about themselves. A detective who believes so hard in lines that even gods trip over them. A green fire from a planet that died, carried by a woman who refuses to let death teach her manners. On the other board, a god of destruction smiled into his goblet, decided not to intervene. And because he did not, the angel beside him did, by the smallest permissible motion. He tapped the side of his staff and pushed a single pebble in a single timeline 2 inches left. Goku felt the pebble like a blessing. He stepped onto it. Ultra instinct is not rage. It is not even joy. It is the peace of a hand, remembering how to catch a cup as it falls. A body remembering the road it has walked so often it no longer needs to look down. In that peace, Goku looked at Paradox, and for the first time since this began, he saw the shape of the thing's hunger. Not cruelty, not malice, boredom. A cosmic child tapping the glass of creation to make it tremble so it could watch the interesting ripples. He bowed. Paradox recoiled, unaccustomed to being treated as a teacher by the meal. "Thank you," Goku said. "For what?" Paradox spat, mirrors fogging. "For making us better." He moved then, and the cathedral learned humility. The chains of time rattled as he ran along them like they were rope over a canyon. Paradox hurled futures and regrets like knives. Goku let them pass through the space where he had been and met the being at the altar with a flurry that was not a storm, but a correction. Each strike shaved an option from the nightmare. The future where Clark rules, gone. The one where Goku grows cold, gone. The one where mercy becomes marketing, gone. The one where strength becomes a hobby, gone. Superman joined without needing to be asked. He did not match speed with speed. He matched meaning with meaning. When Paradox tried to bend him with the scene of a city he could not save, he knelt and held the hand of a mother in the dust long enough to outlast the illusion's patience. When the being showed him a crown that would end war with one order, he took it and melted it into wire, and from the wire made a brace for a child's broken arm. The cathedral shuddered, Paradox screamed and split again. This time the copies were not reflections. They were parasites of possible. They attached themselves to Goku's wrists, to Superman's ankles, whispering versions of necessity and compromise. "If you love them," said one, "you will lie to them. If you want them safe," said another, "you will not ask. If you want to be good," crooned a third, "you must take away their chance to be bad." Goku burned them off with a sigh. Not Kai, not heat. A human breath that remembers its own mother's voice. Superman shook them loose by lifting his eyes toward a light that was wounded but not gone. He let the sun see him. He let it know he was here. "Enough," he said. The cathedral obeyed. Walls fell outward like hands opening. The altar became a doorway into the engine room of the world, the place where constants are negotiated each morning between things with no names. Paradox staggered, hairs of clockwork fraying. It reached for the sun again, greed unlearning wisdom. Superman was faster this time. He put himself between the reaching and the star. "You can't have it," he said. "And you can't keep it," Paradox answered, voice sharp with a hunger that had finally allowed itself to be ugly. "You are a story told about a man. I am the silence between chapters. You arrest me, nothing moves. You starve me. The multiverse ossifies. It must pull. It must resist. I am that pull." Goku stood beside Superman, shoulder almost touching. "Then pull on us," he said softly. "Not on them." Paradox laughed and lunged, not at their bodies, but at the seam where their different versions of goodness rubbed raw. It gouged its hands into the friction and dragged. The world bucked. The sky cracked along the fault where "do not kill" and "do not let live" have argued since the first dawn. Cities tilted, prayers spilled. Somewhere a child dropped a toy and learned what breaking sounds like. Goku's hand shot out and caught the fault like a staff in a dojo. Superman put his palm to the other side and pushed back. Between them, the crack became a line, then a seam, then a scar, then a story you tell about a scar, because the scar is a teacher. Paradox stumbled, half-starved, confused by the taste of being resisted without being hated. "Who taught you this trick?" it hissed. Goku shrugged. "A lot of people, mostly mistakes." Superman's mouth twitched. "My mom." Something changed in the way Paradox held itself. A tremor, surprise. In the mirrors on its chest, for the first time, the two of them were not enemies in any branch. In all of them, they stood shoulder to shoulder. The being's appetite did not know what to do with that. It reached for the only lever left: escalation. The cathedral fell away. Space returned, but not the honest kind. This was orbit, rewritten into a coliseum. Earth below a blue coin, stars above like the eyes of judges too distant to love what they watch. Paradox took on a new shape, neither clock nor glass, but something like a cathedral bell with a heart made of winter. It rang. The ring made bones remember ice ages. It made heat clocks stutter. It made the core of the sun flinch in a way stars do not admit to flinching. Goku flared finally, not out of anger, but duty. The silver in his eyes shone like a promise kept. He stepped into the ring and turned it aside with his forearm. The skin there blistered and did not complain. Superman did the arithmetic and trusted it. He dove the cape a comet, struck the bell's side with the exact force required to detune it by an integer you could teach a child. The ring wobbled, the winter heart cracked. Paradox shrieked in a voice that had always hidden behind cleverness. The shrine of itself broke. It became again a man of mirrors and a clock that refused to be a friend to anyone. "This ends now," it said. "No," Superman answered. "This changes now." Goku's head tilted, listening to something the ear does not own. He nodded. He's right. They did not combine powers in a beam choreographed for the applause of gods. They did not shout names of attacks. They moved in the way a promise moves when two people decide to keep it on the same day for the rest of their lives. Goku flowed through Paradox, not around it, not against it. He let the being swing and did not punish the swing for existing. He guided it into the place where it could not hurt anyone. Superman took each guided momentum and made it useful. A reflection meant to blind was refracted into the corner of the arena where a satellite was falling and pushed it back into a stable orbit. A clock hand meant to pierce was bent into a circle and became a brace around the rip in the sky to keep it from widening. Paradox, for the first time since it had learned to speak, felt something like fatigue. "What are you doing to me?" it gasped. "Making you work," Goku said. "Making you answer," Superman said. They were not winning in the way the being had trained itself to measure. They were neither killing it nor dying for it. They were not feeding it with melodrama or cheating it with apathy. They were doing the thing you do to boredom when you are kind, giving it a job. The rip began to knit. The sun steadied. On the earth below, someone laughed at a joke they had heard yesterday and only just understood. And the laugh climbed the air until it was a ladder Paradox could not make itself stop looking at. It made a decision then, the first honest one of its life. If it could not eat them this way, it would eat them the obvious way. It would level them with an idea too clean to deflect. It stopped moving. "Choose," Paradox said, and the arena sharpened into a blade. "Only one of you keeps your world." The question fell like iron. The universe, every version, every maybe, waited. It was a test the being knew how to grade. Heroes pick sacrifice. They argue over who dies prettier. They break into noble pieces and feed the machine. Goku looked at Superman. Superman looked at Goku. "No," they said together. Paradox's mirrors cracked. "That isn't how this works." "It is now," Goku said gently. "We don't choose which world lives. We choose how to carry both, and how to share the weight," Superman added. They raised their hands, not at the being, but at the seam in the sky, at the trembling in the sun that wasn't fully healed. Goku's ki and Superman's solar breath braided, not as attack, but as scaffolding. They did not close the wound by force. They held it shut long enough for it to remember how to close itself. Paradox lunged, furious, starving, more small than it had ever allowed itself to believe. It hit the braided light and slid. It tried to bite the rope and learned that you cannot eat something that is two friends holding hands. It broke, not into shards, not into screams. into an idea that was finally willing to be argued with. The clock stilled. The mirrors fogged and, in fogging, stopped lying. Where a monster had hovered, a problem slumped. Goku caught it before it fell. Superman took the other side. "Listen," the saiyan said, "we can't be interesting for you forever, but we can be enough for now," the kryptonian said. They set it down, not on a prison floor, but on the threshold between harm and work. "Every day," Superman told it, "there is a sunrise, and someone who wants to sleep through it. Go wake them. That's a meal you can live on." "Every day," Goku added, "there is someone who thinks fighting is the only way to feel alive. Go teach them to breathe without breaking things. That's another." Paradox stared at them, all its faces bare. It would backslide. It would forget. It would try to make the universe ring like crystal again because it liked the sound. But for one long human moment, it believed them. It nodded, and the rip closed with a sound like a book agreeing to be finished later. The arena dissolved. Orbit softened back into normal sky. The sun burned a clean gold, forgiving because that is what fire does when it is loved. Goku and Superman hung there, two specks against an ocean of light, suddenly, hilariously tired. "You okay?" Goku asked. Superman smiled, and the smile was farm boy simple. "I am now." "Me too," Goku said. "You hit weird, by the way. Like a promise." "Compliment?" Superman asked. "The best kind," Goku said. And then his eyes unfocused, in that way of his when he felt a distant call to dinner or danger. "I should check on my people." "So should I," Superman said. They separated without ceremony. No handshake photographed by the gods. No vow carved into asteroids. Just two men returning to their worlds because the worlds were waiting and their names were not the point. Behind them, very far away, an angel with a staff turned to a god who was pretending to nap. "Well?" Whis asked. Beerus cracked one eye. "It's fine," he yawned. "The universe didn't break. The food won't be late." Whis smiled the smile of those who have watched children not destroy the house when left alone. Quite. On Earth, communications stuttered back like birds testing the air after a storm. The watchtower recorded a 7-second lacuna in all telemetry and assigned it a provisional name that would later be rewritten by journalists into something prettier. Across oceans, power grids cooled and then remembered their manners. A man in Metropolis lowered a violin from his chin, blinked, and began again at the bar he had broken on when the sun left the room. This time, the note held, Superman did not drop to the Daily Planet roof in triumph. He didn't have triumph inside him, he had continuity. He landed lightly, boots touching the stone with the courtesy of a guest, returning after borrowing the sky without asking. His phone vibrated in a stubborn pocket of kryptonian fabric, not designed for such human annoyances. Somehow, it had found a way. "Clark?" Lois said. No preamble. The word made by love and fear together. "Here," he answered. "Good," she said. And he could hear the typewriter in her voice, tapping out the shape of the day. "How bad?" "Bad for 7 seconds," he said. "Strange for an hour. Better now." "Did you fix it?" "I helped something stop breaking it." "Is that what we call victory today?" "That's what we call Tuesday." There was a pause in which both of them pictured the other smiling. It was not superstition. It was a form of prayer. "Come home," Lois said. "As soon as I make sure everyone else can," he answered, and ended the call, because if he didn't, he would go, and he couldn't yet. He went to hospitals. He went to rooftops where men had moved toward edges because the light had left and taken meaning with it. He went to a classroom where a teacher had asked the children to put their heads on their desks and breathe with her until the world remembered its job. He stood unseen and remembered his. On the other world, the one where martial gods measure afternoons in cups of tea poured for monsters who forgot how to be anything but, Goku landed in a courtyard where Chi-Chi was already crossing her arms, even though she had set out plates for 2 more helpings than the table could decently handle. "You're late," she said. "I saved a son," he tried. "You will save a bath next," she replied. And then her eyes softened, because there are only so many times you can say the word late and hear it echo in a house too quiet. "Are you hurt?" He looked at his forearm where the bell had blistered him. The skin there was already cooling, already forgetting the insult. "A little," he said truthfully. She touched the blister. It hissed and calmed. "Eat," she ordered. "Then tell me what you learned." He did. It took longer than it should have, because every time he said something about paradox and possibility, Goten asked a question shaped like an airplane, and Gohan added a footnote shaped like a law, and Chi-Chi added rice. By the end, the blister had become a memory, and the memory had become a story, and the story had become a lesson that did not need a moral hung on it in words. It had its own gravity, as watched from a shade that was not cast by anything physical. He approved quietly, which is the loudest noise angels are allowed. Beerus pretended to sleep again and actually did. The second consequence of salvation is rumor. In Metropolis, a woman told a friend over coffee that she had seen an angel in a GI shake hands with the man who holds up planes, except there had been no handshake, and the woman did not drink coffee, and the friend did not exist. In a village on the edge of a mountain where monks keep clocks, a novice wrote down a story about a man who teaches the sun to breathe properly by listening to it hum. On talk radio, a very confident person explained how solar irregularities are a hoax invented to sell capes. In the spaces between those stories, paradox worked. It did not return to break the world. It kept the job they had given it. It went to a city where the only fun left was cruelty, and found a boy about to throw a bottle from a bridge just to watch it burst. It made the bottle boring and the stars interesting. It went to a warlord who kept peace by eating it, and turned his dreams into a cinema where the reels were spliced out of all the kisses he had refused to witness in order to feel important. It starved differently. It ate the gaps people leave on purpose between what they say they are and what they try to be. It did not enjoy it at first. Enjoyment is a muscle. It grumbled as it lifted, and there were days it put the weights down and sulked. It did not touch the sun. The third consequence of salvation is debt. The universe keeps its own accounts. Goku knew it long before he had language for it. Call it karma or call it momentum. You pull one thread, and a god in another room frowns, because that thread was keeping their tapestry from admitting it needs washing. Superman knew it too, in the way you know the city uses you while loving you, and that both are fair. They both felt the bill slide under the door the same week. It came as whispers first. Dangerous old names turned down to a pewter shine. A scientist who builds cages for things he cannot meet eyes with. A boardroom where hunger wears cologne. A church that keeps a list of allowable miracles and fines those who ask for others. None of it was paradox. All of it was consequence. You keep a sun alive, and shadows underneath it grow ambitious. They did not call each other. They did not make an oath by a statue. They simply moved on the same morning toward different corners of a problem that would have been content to rule if no one remembered how to be ruled by love. Superman landed in a country that had outlawed capes twice and learned to tweet their crimes gorgeously. He did not punch the law. He did not scold the sky. He stood in line at a bakery until the line behind him forgot to be afraid of the men with rifles across the street. When the rifles lifted, he looked at the men until their hands remembered they were hands. Goku went to an island where fighters trained to make money bleed. He entered a ring and bowed lower than the promoters thought polite. He sparred a boy who had won his last 10 matches by removing other people's eardrums with sound. He let the boy hit him, and hit him, and hit him, until the boy started crying, because it is cruel to meet a thing that will not break on schedule. And then Goku held him while he cried until the boy's body remembered it had been built for something better than applause. In the gaps between these small salvations, villains planned. They always do. One of them was smart enough to notice the pattern in the sunlight. He did the math Paradox had failed to want. If you cannot wound a hero by hitting him, make him choose 1,000 softnesses and then accuse him of being soft. He built a machine to amplify emergencies, to make kindness run out of breath. He called it a test of infrastructure. He told himself the word infrastructure would absolve him. He pressed the button. Cities shook. Little ones first. Places heroes visit after they've made the headlines in capitals. A bridge in a town with one famous song. A hospital generator in a neighborhood whose children had stopped believing lightning is beautiful. A dam built by men who had decided the river would be more profitable if it forgot it was a river. Everything broke at once. Everywhere. Because that was the only way to make the men who hold things together for a living admit they needed help. They did not admit it. They simply asked. Superman asked the firefighters in a language of hand signs and weight and smoke. He carried and carried and carried. He learned new names for gratitude and kept none of them. Goku asked the water to behave, and the water remembered the shape it had loved before concrete taught it manners. Paradox hovered at the edge of the map like guilt. It wanted so badly to be helpful in a way that also scratched the itch. It did not scratch. It found one old man shuffling toward a switch in a basement he should not have been in, and it put the switch under his hand. The power came back on in the hospital. The child with the brace made from melted crowns blinked awake and asked for a story. The nurse told her the one about 2 sons who teach each other how to rise. All of this took place beneath a sky that had learned briefly and beautifully how to pause. The pause did not repeat. That is not what pauses do when they are sacred. But memory, which is a quieter god than most, kept the lesson. Goku stood one evening on a hill that was not the one from which he had seen Paradox first. It was just a hill, with grass and insects rehearsing as if they had an opening night. He felt the world under his feet like a friend's shoulder. He closed his eyes and did not search for a fight. Superman stood one morning on a roof that had seen more capes than shingles. He held a cup of coffee between his hands because it was warm, and because it made him belong to the city in a small, delicious way. He let the cape rest. He let the city hold him up for once. He watched a pigeon land and forgive everyone. Far away, in a place made out of between, Paradox listened to 1,000 clocks and let most of them tick without turning any of them off. The trouble announced itself without theatrics. A tremor tucked inside ordinary news. A sentence in a briefing that assumed itself small. A station on the far side of the moon began humming at a frequency not listed in any of its manuals. The hum threaded the regolith, then the basalt, then the vacuum. It found the seams in the magnetic field lines like a thief who knows blueprints by heart. Observatories blinked, recalibrated, pretended to be calm. In Metropolis, Clark turned his head, as if someone had touched his shoulder. He did not move at once. He listened. The hum was polite about being terrifying. It asked for permission to be ignored. He did not grant it. He left the coffee cooling on the parapet, and the city, being old friends with departures, did not complain. Goku felt it differently. A grain of sand in the teeth of a river. He was halfway through repairing a fence he had knocked down with a laugh the previous night when the grain caught. He tapped a post, heard the echo return from further away than the post had any business containing. He wiped his hands on his GI and looked up. The hum was a net. It draped the moon, then unspooled toward Earth with the unhurried certainty of a law being enforced. It was not paradox. Paradox paused things. This counted them. It tasted like inventory. On the watchtower, black-suited men with sharp hair and softer eyes asked questions of a screen that had decided to answer in hexameters. Batman did not look up when Superman arrived. He kept reading off numbers that meant little and everything. He spoke them as if saying them in his voice could bully them into reasonable behavior. "Containment geometry," he said at last. "Someone is trying to quantify the sun's variance since the event. They think if they can name all the ways light behaves, they can own it." Clark's eyes narrowed. "Who? Either a committee or a ghost," Bruce answered. "Maybe both." Goku touched down in a breath of air that smelled like home, dragged across vacuum. He nodded to the room as a man nods to a dojo, then blinked at the readouts. "So many boxes," he murmured. "Who lives inside all that? People who don't know how to be safe unless they count it," Bruce said. And for a heartbeat, the edge went out of his voice and left only the old mercy. Nobody suspects of being there until it saves them. The hum thickened. It collected itself into a shape around the sun. No cage, not yet, but a corset laced by hands that trusted restraint more than grace. Light still came. It came obediently. It came as a clerk with a clipboard walking an aisle too narrow to turn in. Superman reached without moving and felt the narrowing lanes in himself. His cells, which had sung since infancy, began to recite. He could still fly. He could still lift. He could not wonder as easily. The wonder had to wait for an appointment. Goku stepped forward. The air around him remembered it used to be a field. He pressed his palm against the void glass, and the hum showed him, in a language that wasn't math but wanted to be, the premise: if all anomalies are mapped, none will surprise us. If none surprise us, none can hurt us. If none can hurt us, the world will finally deserve the word civilized. He smiled, not unkindly. Someone afraid of the next 7 seconds decided to own all the rest. "Where?" Superman asked. Bruce answered by turning a monitor toward them. It displayed a blank patch of ocean and a longitude that had embarrassed cartographers into pretending it didn't interest them. "There," he said. "A lab that has never existed is doing work it would never admit to if it did." "I'll go," Clark said. "We'll go," Goku corrected gently. Bruce did not argue. He handed them both the absence of a plan, which is sometimes what trust looks like when time has stopped being polite. They left the watchtower like breath leaving a prayer. Space unrolled. Ocean rose to meet them. The lab was a whale-sized silence stitched into the waves with cables that lied convincingly as seaweed. Their feet found steel disguised as kelp. Lights bloomed. And in the bloom stood a man whose lab coat was an alibi and whose eyes had the exact color of a sky that does not permit weather. He didn't flinch. He had rehearsed this meeting with all the versions of himself he kept in a small room inside his head where applause sounded like ventilation. "You're early," he said. "We weren't scheduled for confrontation until the second stage." "Turn it off," Superman said, polite as winter. The man spread his hands. "I am turning the world back on," he replied. 7 seconds turned it off. You must have felt it too, all that messy meaning leaking into physics. Do you know how many small gods woke up in hospitals when the monitors lost their faith? Do you know how many men like me realize the house has no adult supervision? So I applied. Goku watched his mouth as he spoke. He had learned to listen with his eyes when words went slippery. The mouth moved like a metronome. The words never tripped over compassion. "What do you want?" Goku asked. "What they always want," the man said, not pretending otherwise. "Responsibility. But the definition only works if I hold the receipts. The sun is a receipt. I am only tidying comments out of the code." Superman looked up. The hum had threaded deeper. Birds were flying in squares above cities because circles were no longer a line item. Flowers opened on schedule and then apologized for the effrontery. Somewhere, a child drew a sun with a ruler and didn't enjoy it. "You can catalog the light," he said. "You can't own it." "You don't own it either," the man replied, almost kindly. "Your body is a tenancy. Your legend is a lease." Goku's hand closed in fist, then opened again, embarrassed by what fists still want. He thought of paradox, of teaching boredom to work. He thought of Chi-Chi tapping the blister and making it forget the worst of itself. He stepped closer. "I think you're tired," he said. The man blinked. It cost him more energy than he had budgeted. "Excuse me? You're tired of the part of the world you can't carry," Goku went on. "So you've decided to nail it to the floor." The man smiled, and there was something like pity inside it. "You're romantic. He is naive. Both of you are dangerously underqualified to be allowed near a reactor." "Turn it off," Superman repeated. No heat, no threat. Just the sentence you say to a child holding a knife the right way for the wrong reason. "No," the man said, because he had not built the hum to be turned off by a word. He had built it to obey only outcomes. He pressed a button without pressing a button. The lab shook itself awake into its final form. Rings sliding out of rings, a harp strung with numbers, a crown designed for a star's unwilling brow. The hum went from patient to proud. The sun flinched, publicly this time. Daylight in 100 cities tilted color, muffling birdsong into compliance. Humans in offices felt productive in a way that hated them. Superman launched. Goku ghosted beside him. They hit the mechanism gently and were punished for the courtesy. The hum caught their good intentions in its gears and tried to make them predictable. For 3 breaths they were. It hurt, like playing a song you had written for someone you loved and finding every note turned into a spreadsheet. "You can't fight a policy," Bruce's voice said into their ears, and they heard the half-amused despair. "Break the incentive." Goku looked at the man and saw not a villain, but a ledger. He looked past him at the team behind him. 3 engineers already ashamed on behalf of their future selves. A programmer whose hands had started shaking when the birds flew wrong. A janitor who had made sure the emergency exits weren't locked, even though the schematics told them to be. "Who's paying you?" Goku asked. The man's smile sharpened. "I am," he said, offended by the suggestion that anyone else could afford his conscience. "Then what are you afraid costs too much?" Superman asked. The man did not answer. He looked at a camera that wasn't there and waited for applause that would never arrive this far underwater. Goku followed his gaze, then looked where gazes go when they have been trained to pretend they have not. The cable. The one wire the hum was willing to admit to needing. It didn't carry power, it carried permission. He pointed. "There," he said softly. Superman nodded. He moved with a carefulness that made speed look like respect. The wire was armored in law, wrapped in song, guarded by a violence that dressed itself as civility. He touched it and felt the memo's thrash. "I hate this part," he said, and broke it. The hum faltered. It did not die. It remembered it could die, and became suddenly less certain of its argument. Up above, the sun forgot to be ashamed. Birds tried a circle and were not arrested. The lab stuttered, as if the ocean had decided it preferred unowned currents. The man stepped back. He pressed 3 more non-buttons. The rings whirled, angry now, less elegant. "You cannot just," he began, and stopped because he had always known they could. "You're smart," Goku said. "Be smarter. Build something that makes the light easier to share instead of easier to grade." "That doesn't make money," the man snapped, finally honest enough to be dull. "Then make friends," Goku answered. And even he looked surprised that the sentence had arrived in his mouth like that, already complete. The man watched the sun resume its unsupervised breathing and understood intimately how men go mad. He did not today. He put his hands at his sides. He lifted his chin. "This isn't over," he said, "because people like him do not know how to leave a room without a line that thinks it is famous." "No," Superman agreed. "It's not." They left him to his colleagues and their shame. The hum retreated into a diary. The ocean, vindicated, scolded the lab's hull, until bolts remembered they were better as ore. Above, the sun turned without a script. It found its rhythm the old way, by doing the next thing well enough for the next thing to be possible. The peace did not hold, in the sense that peace never holds. It rests, and we rest in it. The world went back to its errands. People argued about movies and rent. Somewhere, a girl recited multiplication tables out loud because the numbers loved being spoken to like pets. Goku trained with an enemy who had decided not to be one anymore and learned a new angle from a punch he'd seen 1,000 times. He laughed so hard, he forgot what laughing had been invented for and had to rediscover it. Superman lifted a fairy back onto the water with the care of a man setting a baby in a crib. He waved at a child. He never remembers not to, but the bill from the star was not paid in full. That was not an error. It was a promise coming due. It arrived as whispers of gravity behaving like grief. It came as auroras at noon and clocks whose hands insisted on being kind, refusing to point at hours that would have made the day crueler. It came as soft failures. The universe did not rip. It sagged. The seam Goku and Superman had held with braided light had scarred. Yes, but scars tighten. The tightening tugged at other fabrics. Somewhere beyond charted breath, a thing that admired symmetry too much stirred. Weiss saw it first because angels notice when symmetry raises its hand. He did not wake Beerus. He did not need to. Gods wake when worship falters or improves, and this would improve worship. He went to the hill where Goku was inventing a new kindness in the arrangement of his stances, and stood within earshot like a bell Nobody wanted to ring. "You may need to leave your dinner early," he said. Goku turned, already apologizing to a future Chi-Chi. "What's wrong?" "Nothing," Whis said, and then smiled at the mortal pleasure of lying in a way that protects more than it ruins. "Everything is about to balance more aggressively than you will like. Your friend will need you." Goku's face softened at the word. "Friend?" he repeated, tasting it. In the fortress, light folded twice to make a door for a man who knocked on his own house in case it wanted to be alone. Superman stood before a crystal that recorded history the way glaciers do, slow but convinced. The crystal was humming in a key he had only heard once before, when his father's last story ran out of planet to stand on. "Show me," he said. And the fortress showed him not the future, but a pressure map of choices. At the center of the map was a bloom like a flower drawn by a mathematician trying to make romance behave. The bloom had a name in a language he had not learned and never would. The fortress gave him a translation it hoped would be good enough: the equator of fate. "What happens there?" he asked. The crystal hesitated. Then it admitted, with the humility of a machine taught manners by a man who says please to toasters, "Decisions that will be written as destiny afterward." He called no one. He put his palm to the glass. He told the sun he would be late and felt it forgive him. He found Goku already there, standing on a piece of sky that had decided to be floor for the occasion. Below them, Earth rolled its blue hymn. Above them, the bloom unfolded, filaments of cause and story thickening into cables. In the middle hung a weight shaped like a question. Paradox hovered at the edge of the frame, less mirror now and more window. It did not speak. It had learned to keep its appetite on a leash in public. "What is it?" Superman asked. Goku squinted. A choice pretending to be a wall. The weight shivered. Lines around it snapped taut and pulled. The bloom tightened into a knot. Somewhere, physics winced. Weiss appeared, not stepping out of anything, and thus not alarming what did not want to be alarmed. He inclined his head. "The multiverse is short of oxygen," he said conversationally. "Someone must breathe for it while it remembers how." Superman glanced sideways at Goku. Goku nodded. They did not debate who would count to 10 and who to 14. They put their hands on the knot. It burned like loyalty. It cut like promises kept too long. It was heavy in the way. Grief is heavy when it has no place to sit. "On 3, Goku said. They did not pull. They lifted. The knot rose. The lines loosened a fraction, and then 2. The bloom remembered its flowerhood. It inhaled. The universe exhaled. The weight did not become light. It became shareable. And then, the thing that admired symmetry too much arrived. It did not announce itself with a roar. It did not even ring. It simply entered the room where decisions dress themselves and tried to pick out their clothes for them. It wore no clock, no mirror. It was a shape you think you have seen before, on coins in cathedrals, in the face of a parent when they are too afraid to let you choose wrong. It was called many things in many rooms. The fortress would have named it the custodian. Wise, with a particular tired fondness, called it predictability when speaking to himself. People pray to it by accident all the time. "You are making a mess," it said. Its voice was clean. "People need rails. They need roads," Superman said, astonished at the anger that did not come. Only patience came, carrying a broom. "They need fields," Goku said, "so they can walk in the wrong direction until they learn." "Fields flood," the custodian replied. "Roads crack, rails stay rails." "And cages stay cages," Superman said. The custodian did not sneer. It did not know how. It tried again. 7 seconds taught the world it is fragile. You saved it by mistake. You should have allowed the lesson to finish. I will finish it kindly. It reached for the knot with hands that felt like rules enacted with a father's best intentions. Goku blocked, not with force, but with offense taken on behalf of every poor choice that taught someone how to be better without ruining them. Superman blocked, not with heat, but with the memory of a boy in a cape, cut from a red blanket running through corn and being forgiven by the corn for breaking it because he apologized to each stalk. The custodian tilted its head. You are very sentimental. Yes, they said, and lifted together. The knot came up another inch. Somewhere, a woman decided not to make a law about something love could handle. Somewhere, a scientist put down a machine that would have worked and picked up a question that would teach more. Somewhere, a god swallowed a decree and coughed up a parable. Paradox, watching, trembled. Hunger returned, tenderer now, less sharp. It understood for the first time that astonishment can be fed deliberately without cruelty. The custodian made its choice, as all guardians do when they discover that children have learned to move the furniture while they napped. It stepped back 1 pace. I will tidy later, it said. And this time, there was a crack in the cleanliness, big enough to see humility peeking through. Please, Superman said, tidy with them. Please, Goku said, eat with us. The custodian did not answer. It dissolved into guidelines that would be interpreted badly in some places and beautifully in others, as guidelines always are. The knot loosened enough to be a bow waiting for a gift to justify itself. They held it until the universe remembered all by itself that breath is not an emergency. Goku laughed then, a small laugh, a private one. I keep forgetting we're allowed to do that, he said, meaning hold, meaning help without hurting. Superman wiped a palm on his thigh out of habit, as if sweat could stick in a place that had forgotten friction. We are, he said, and we will keep forgetting. That's why we get more days. Below them, the world turned the color of bread. Above them, stars pretended not to be proud. They let go together. The knot did not spring back into chaos. It sat like a well-taught animal, not cowed, not wild, willing to be good if you kept being good near it. Paradox drifted closer, hands visible, teeth put away. I have found a city, it said, awkward in the way new honesty always is. They are bored in a way that could become cruelty. May I? Go, Superman said. Teach them to make their own surprises, Goku added. Paradox left with something like a bow that would be a bow once it learned where to place its weight. They stood a while longer without speaking. It was not silence. It was gratitude trying not to embarrass them. Then Goku squinted toward a horizon that was not there. Dinner, he said, mournful and delighted. Superman smiled. Home, he answered. They parted. The bloom continued to breathe. The sun, steady, forgave the next mistake before it happened, which is how stars keep friends. And on a night that arrived on time without being scheduled, 2 worlds slept under their respective guardians. Neither guardian considered himself a god, and both of them were correct. It arrived with the weightless fatigue that follows real work, the kind of tired that doesn't demand sleep so much as a chair and a quiet corner to remember what your hands did. Streets filled with evening the way cups fill from a faucet that learned restraint. People texted apologies they meant and read replies they didn't deserve and tried again. Traffic made promises to itself and kept enough of them to qualify as civilization. Goku walked a footpath that hadn't existed until his feet decided it should. The grass folded politely, then sprang back as if unwilling to hold a grudge. Ahead, the house glowed with the kind of light that stings the eyes of men who've learned to see in the dark. He paused at the gate, the wood warm under his palm, the hinges remembering his boyhood fingers swinging from them for sport. "You smell like ozone and honesty," Chi-Chi said from the doorway without looking up from the pan. "Wash." He did. The water scolded him for a second, and then forgave him because he let it. He came to table clean and hungry, and ready to earn the chair. He listened more than he spoke. A story about a neighbor, whose story about a neighbor had been wrong. News of a harvest that would be late because the river chose a longer way on purpose. Laughter that wore no armor. He answered questions with the care of a man placing stones in a wall he intends to lean against. Across an ocean and a sky, Clark stood on the stoop of an apartment that could hold him if he remembered to stoop. He knocked out of habit and because the ritual soothed the door. Lois answered without asking who it was because there are only so many times you need to check if the person you love has returned as himself before the practice becomes an insult. "You look like a man who made a mess and cleaned it," she said, stepping aside. "You also look like you left a mug somewhere you swear you didn't." "I left a mug somewhere I swear I didn't," he admitted. And she kissed him for telling on himself before the city did. They ate, not a feast, not a ceremony, but a meal that knew its job. To make the body remember it belongs to the day. Lois asked questions that assumed answers, and still gave them space to surprise her. He told her the kind of truth that doesn't require supervillains to be worth hearing. Later, after dishes stacked into the temporary sculptures domesticity invents to prove it's alive, they sat by the window. The city muttered contentedly in the tone of a cat who has forgiven the weather and might forgive you if you earn it. Clark leaned his head back, eyes closed, because sometimes the bravest thing a man can do is not look for trouble long enough to rest. "Do you ever miss it?" Lois asked softly. "The quiet," he said. "The simple problem, the one you can lift and move," he thought. He could have answered with a joke. He could have folded the question into one of those old conversations they kept like a sweater, a little worn, a lot tender. He did not. "Sometimes," he said. "But then I remember what the simple problems are made of. A ferry full of people going home. A building where someone's rent is a month late and they're embarrassed about how much they care. Simple isn't smaller. It's closer." "And the big ones?" she asked. "The big ones ask if you remember how to be close," he said. "If you don't, they win." She put her head on his shoulder and was quiet. He felt the weight of it like a benediction, pronounced by someone who refuses to be ordained, because the world needs more unofficial blessings. At the edge of all this, in the lane between day and night, where cosmic bureaucrats clock out and poets clock in, Paradox sat on a rooftop and watched a boy ignore a screen in favor of listening to a cricket he could not see. Hunger still lived in Paradox, but it had learned manners. It took a breath that wasn't breath and let the boy choose boredom, and the boredom peeled itself and became attention. A machine inside an old laboratory continued to try to hum a sun into obedience. It failed politely. Its creator filed reports to himself about how heroism is not a scalable solution, and forgot that scale is not always the right axis of measurement. He slept and dreamed of a garden where plants grew not in rows, but in poems, The custodian reorganized a set of guidelines and put them in a drawer. It put a lock on the drawer and placed the key on top. This counted as progress. Wise refilled a cup and told Beerus nothing, because nothing was exactly how much the god wanted to hear until it was not. And then he would say so in a tone that made continents doubt their life choices. For now, the angel let the silence be a gratitude he did not have to speak aloud. Night offered itself. Day surrendered. The dream came to Goku first. It did not skulkingly enter through the holes that fear leaves unpatched. It walked through the front gate and took its shoes off. He stood in a field that had known him as a boy, and as a man, and as a myth, and had loved all three, without making the distinctions that people make when they are tired and need someone else's categories to lean on. A path ran through the field, and the path did not lead to battle. A figure waited at the bend. Not a god, not a judge. A farmer in a blue shirt rolling up his sleeves. Hair neat in the way of men who learned from mirrors that love prefers you as you are. He had eyes that could become a sunrise without bragging about it. Pa? Goku said, because in the dream language of men who grew up in several kinds of family, the word for father is a coat you keep even when you outgrow the shoulders. The farmer shook his head and became not just father but idea. Patience with mud under its nails. I'm the one who reminds you why, he said. You've been busy with how? Goku laughed because, of course. I have a friend, he said without needing to say who. He reminds me too. I know, the farmer said. It's his job. He chooses it every day, Goku said. And you choose it when you fight for joy to be useful, the farmer said. Don't let anyone sell you a war where the invoice reads glory and the delivery is loneliness. The field brightened. The dream released his hand, the way a teacher lets go of the back of a child's bike when the child is ready to believe that balance is possible and personal. On another stoop, in another city, Clark dreamed of Kansas. Not a memory reenacted, but a memory revised by affection. A kitchen that had known more pies than arguments. A dog who refused to die in any anecdote on principle. A sky that wanted to brag about stars, but chose humility and showed him crickets instead. Jonathan Kent sat at the table, as if he had been there the whole time, because in several pockets of the multiverse he had, and in the ones where he hadn't, he had found ways to write notes from absence. You look tired, Jonathan said. Decent tired, the kind that says you earned it. Clark smiled. He sat. The chair did not complain about capes. Met a friend on a line where choices dress up as destiny, he said. We told a knot to behave. Jonathan nodded, because sons tell fathers miracles and fathers answer with chores. And tomorrow? He asked. Tomorrow I see whether the knot remembered, Clark said. I hold the door for someone. I tell a boy not to throw a bottle off a bridge because once you see how it breaks, you might want to see it again, and then you're someone else, and you don't know when that happened. Jonathan's eyes were a kind of weather you can count on. That's the work, he said. Big or small, it's the same motion. Hold, lift, let go, repeat. Clark reached for his father's hand. The dream let them pretend the reach arrived. Morning returned with ordinary fanfare. Birds practicing the same 10 notes and finding new ways to mean them. Coffee making promises it delivers often enough. Traffic apologizing to itself without changing. Newspapers reporting a world that survived another night of its own imagination. Goku stretched on the hill. Superman tied his tie. In different mirrors, two men checked whether their faces still fit them. They did. They did not plan to meet that day. They met anyway because the world sometimes sets the table for you when you forget to RSVP. It happened over the Atlantic, where clouds learned to impersonate mountains. A storm had decided to test whether planes remember how to be brave. A jetliner trembled and then shook in a way engineers label non-compliant, and mothers label with prayers that start in languages older than words. Systems failed in a beautiful sequence of worst-case assumptions. Clark's cape arrived first, because capes have a sense of theater that even careful men indulge now and then. He slid under the fuselage and steadied the belly with 2 palms and a promise. Metal groaned. Dynamics recalculated. The air remembered how to hold. Goku appeared on the nose like a smile someone forgot to be ashamed of. He pressed a single finger to the skin of the jet and spoke to it the way he speaks to mountains, letting it know he understands how much it wants to be solid and how much it is afraid of failing at that job in front of a sky that never forgives witnesses. "Hello again," Superman said, grinning despite the work. "Good morning," Goku said, size bright with the precise seriousness of play done correctly. They eased the plane through the tantrum. Lightning tried to impress them with its lineage. Thunder auditioned for godhood. Neither was unseemly, but neither got the job. The storm subsided. Embarrassed and secretly relieved, the plane landed. No one applauded because sometimes normalness is the loudest cheer, and it had already been heard. They hovered a moment above tarmac that remembers wars and kisses. No speeches, no cameras, just 2 men and the kind of quiet you can carry. "Lunch?" Goku said. Clark tilted his head, listening to a city and a wife and a dog and a galaxy of duties that would not be offended by a sandwich. "I know a place," he said. They ate on a rooftop that hadn't been special until today. Goku tried a hot dog with the solemnity of a monk encountering a new scripture. Clark explained condiments as if revising a treaty. They laughed. They let the day be small. "Do you ever worry we taught the wrong lesson?" Goku asked at last, not looking at him. "Always," Clark said. "Then I remember that the wrong lesson tries to teach itself, and the right one needs volunteers." "What's the right one?" Goku asked. Clark considered the skyline, which insisted on being heroic even when no one was watching. "That power is a verb, and love is a place," he said. "That holding is harder than hitting. That we're not special because we can lift more, but because we stand there when it's heavy and we don't make the weight about us." Goku chewed, swallowed, nodded. "We can do that," he said. "We can keep doing that." They stood. They did not shake hands. The city beneath them exhaled an afternoon that did not need saving. They went back to work. Epilogue. Years later, a child would ask a question in a classroom with a clock that had learned to be kind about the last 5 minutes. The child would have drawn the sun with messy rays and a smile, because he wanted the paper to remember him fondly when it curled inside a box his mother would keep for no reason. She could explain to anyone who didn't already understand. "Teacher," he would say, "who keeps the sun on?" The teacher would open her mouth to say nuclear fusion and hear herself say instead, "We do." Because some truths arrive in phrasing that makes physicists and poets both nod. She would point not up but around, to a student sharing an eraser, to a janitor opening a window because the room forgot to breathe, to a story taped to the wall about a day when 2 men held a knot until it stopped pretending to be destiny. Somewhere very far away and very close, on a hill and on a roof, and in all the rooms that happen between hills and roofs, 2 friends would be busy. One would be teaching a punch to apologize before it landed. One would be cupping a face he did not know, in hands that never tire of lifting. Paradox would be sitting in a theater where the feature was a boy learning to pronounce the word enough without crying. It would be hungry and certain and briefly, gloriously full. The custodian would be writing a rule about not writing so many rules. It would fail and try again. A bureaucrat of good intentions making peace with sunsets. The man in the lab would design something that did not sell well and did not die. A garden would happen to it. He would learn names for plants without owning them. Whis would pour another cup and smile in a way that made erupting stars choose not to, just this once. Beerus would wake and stretch and decide to destroy nothing today, for once, and because he could. And the sun, unsupervised, unowned, ungraded, would rise. Not because two gods fought for it once, not because an angel approved, not because a ledger allowed it, but because that is what it does when given the chance. It would pour into windows, into soups, into the backs of necks bent over kindness. It would be gentle. It would be ablaze. It would be the light by which the day reads itself. If you listen very closely in the space between a heartbeat and a choice, you can hear a bell that didn't ring. You can hear laughter that learned manners. You can hear the sound of two men saying no to a question that had made too many heroes famous for dying beautifully. You can hear, faint and honest, the universe remembering the trick: hold, lift, let go, repeat.